Tropical storm Gabrielle has formed. I've got all the newest information in other areas of interest. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, it's Rusty. I'm back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. Hey, it's great to see you on this Wednesday. I hope you're doing well. Coming up, we do now have Tropical Storm Gabrielle. We'll have the first look at the advisory, the track from the Hurricane Center, all the model information, other areas of potential tropical interest, not just potential development, but some excessive rainfall in some areas with some tropical waves. So a lot to get into. We'll get started. Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It's storm season. The storm moves into your area. You get damage of any kind. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. Make sure you go to leanonmelaw.com if you guys would like more information. And as always, love to hear from you guys. Please let me know in the comments section below what's been happening in your area, what the weather has been like, and we'll jump right into it. So we now have Tropical Storm Gabrielle. Winds are 45 miles an hour. The system is broad, elongated, moving off to the west-northwest at 22. I know it doesn't look like much, right? It's such an elongated system, but there's something called scatterometer data. When the Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance aircraft can't go this far in the Atlantic Basin, they send that data over, and it did pick up low-level surface winds that were completely enclosed, and they put it at 40 knots, so 45 mile an hour winds. If we look at the visible satellite imagery, there is clearly still some drier air, and there are multiple areas of rotation across this broad center. So the Hurricane Center even said, we're not exactly sure where to actually pinpoint the low level center because it could reform north, and you can clearly see that spin there. It could be a little bit farther off towards the south. Certainly all of the deeper convection is on the northeast side, but in the next 24 hours, this is likely to continue to consolidate, get one true low-level center, and then move off to the west-northwest. Now, it should slow down in forward speed, but if you notice, a lot of these points still have it as a tropical storm. It is not forecast to strengthen very significantly over the next 2 to 3 days. It's still fighting wind shear. An upper-level trough will continue to, impact the storm. There's a little bit of drier air, but it's more about the wind shear at this point in time. So that's the first track from the Hurricane Center. Got my handy dandy, my trusty rusty, if you will, spatial tool here. At this point in time, it's still more than 1,000 miles from the Leeward Islands, places like Antigua, Barbuda, and the Anguilla areas, and there looks to be a nice buffer as Gabrielle begins to move away to the west-northwest, staying far away from the Lesser Antilles and the Leeward Islands in general, again, by about 400 miles plus, depending on if we're looking at the southern side of the cone of uncertainty or towards the center point. So we still have a nice buffer. We'll take a look at the models here coming up in just a second. But again, we've ripped off the now 7th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. So we now have Gabrielle. Umberto is the next name up, the H named storm. All right, so back over here to, again, just kind of surface analysis, kind of looking here. Let me clear this off real quickly. There we go, so I can get to my pointer. Again, it's just so broad. Let's take a look at the water vapor imagery out of this. A little bit of dry air still being circled in. Bigger thunderstorm and just blow up of convection here. So it's likely that the center will probably form on the northern side of this with a deeper convection, which might even put the center a little bit farther north. And the Hurricane Center has actually baked that in to this first forecast because the track is kind of due north to begin with, taking into account where the low-level center might form. But eventually, again, west-northwest and beginning to slow up at this point in time. So now let's take a look at the models. The first thing I want to do is show you guys the spaghetti plots, and where you guys see these concentric rings, those are going to be your wind radii and your forecast wind radii. And you do note that the Hurricane Center has this becoming a hurricane. Now, obviously, one area that we have to really closely monitor is going to be Bermuda. But I got to tell you something, there is still no consensus in the models where this is going to end up going. We still need to get that true low-level center for the models to really begin to, I think, pick up on that. And the intensity forecast is even more widespread than the actual track. But I have good thoughts for our friends in the Eastern Caribbean. Nothing that I've seen on the models today bring it any closer. It's Bermuda right now that is the area of most interest. So let me bring on those spaghetti plots. These are going to be, again, those tracks. And then you can clearly see that most of our tropical models are within that cone of uncertainty. You would always expect it to be an outlier or two, especially when we're beginning just the first track for the hurricane center. But even the farthest southwest are still hundreds of miles away from the northern side of the Leeward Islands. Now, look, there's a tropical wave impacting the area right now. We'll talk about that in a second. That ultimately will more than likely have much more impacts than what Gabrielle is going to for the area. So I'm going to bring up the GFS model. That's interesting. Let's hope when I loop this up, it's not going to be the same. Let me double check one thing real quick here, guys. Let me just do that real fast. I'm going to take it out a little bit more than a week. And I want to be clear. This is, oh no. Interesting. All right. Stay with me here. There we go. All right. No biggie. I had the wrong button pushed. My bad. All good. This should be it. Now, this is the newest run, the 12Z run of the GFS model, okay? This came in just before I recorded this video. It is vastly different than what the previous model run of the GFS had, right? And we'll actually look at the pressure plot from the second model run, the earlier run today, which had this becoming a major hurricane. The newest run of the GFS deterministic is a much more sloppy system as it gets closer to Bermuda. It's really almost hard to see. There's a bit of a defined center there, but nothing that fully wraps up even into next week, right? You have a couple of areas, so it really does have the sheer impacting the storm as it bends around our subtropical ridge, which ultimately should pull it to the north and begin to bend it back to the north and to the east. The subtropical ridge is a little displaced south and east, and with that upper level trough, both features are trying to pull the storm quickly north, slow it down, then ultimately bend it back north and east, well away from the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and the United States East Coast. Again, the only landmass I'm concerned about is Bermuda, but the newest run of the GFS really is a much weaker system. Now, again, most models have this kind of staying in that 50 to 55 mile an hour maximum sustained range for the next 48 to 72 hours, but most then make it a hurricane, and several of them make it a major hurricane. So the fact that the GFS model has come in a lot weaker is interesting. We still expect there to be some model run to run inconsistency, again, without a truly defined low-level center. The models really have a hard time picking up on it, even though we do have a tropical storm. Again, we already talked about how broad of a center it actually is. So it is of note that it's really flip-flop, but we'll see with the next run whether it comes back to a stronger storm. But, large wind field, and again, strengthening as we get towards the weekend and early next week, but just not as strong as what it had in the last run where it was a major hurricane by 7 days out. So still Bermuda. Keep a very close eye on this. When you look at the wind fields, 40, 50. So this is a tropical storm that could potentially wrap up into a hurricane even on this run of the GFS, but it just was much more pronounced in an earlier run today. So we'll monitor that situation for you guys. But you can even see with this broader wind field with a weaker storm that we might have some fresh easterlies coming into Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Leeward Islands, but that would be about it. I mean, we'd get some wind-driven rain coming in, but nothing of any significance. And you notice how even on this run of the GFS, it kind of stalls out a little bit, even west of Bermuda. Let's look at the European ensemble members, right? So this is our European global model. It's developing, it gets stronger, becomes a hurricane over the weekend. Bermuda, potentially in its direct path or just to the east. There are several more members that are a little bit farther to the south. They all have a good buffer between, the greater and lesser Antilles and where it's going, but it is a little bit farther west than the last ensemble member suites from the European model. So it is something to watch. And again, this is all the same storm. It's just where this could potentially go. Of note, can't rule out something trying to develop off the United States East Coast, just like we had yesterday. It was a tropical, non-tropical low moving into the Delmarva Peninsula. This time of the year, you always got to watch out for those quick spin-ups along the Gulf Stream. And then the next tropical wave coming off of the West African coast shows some potential signs of development as well. This is the AI version of the European model. almost in lockstep with the European itself. It's a little bit farther north and east, which is even better for, potential impacts of any indirect kind towards the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, the Greater Antilles in general. Bermuda, we want to try and recurve this east of you because, again, the weaker side of the storm is going to be on the western side. So even if it's a close shave towards Bermuda, we want the storm's center to move off towards the east, the storm's eye, because that keeps the strongest wind fields mainly off towards the east of the island. Icon model has always been weaker and a little bit slower, and it continues to do that. But this time yesterday, it was more over here. Now it does strengthen it. Again, as we get towards early next week, here's Bermuda. It's the recurve to go along with the AI version of the European model. So certainly of note, the Icon model has shifted much farther to the north and to the east with Gabrielle. And again, potential development early next week of the next tropical wave coming off the West African coast. This is a snapshot of the half-say model Sunday afternoon. Okay, the half-say has always been the strongest with Gabrielle. I showed you this in yesterday's video. Its center is 530 miles north of Anguilla on Sunday afternoon, the half-say model. Yesterday was about 550, but there's still plenty of buffer, and that's good news because it has it as a major Category 4 hurricane with winds of around 150 miles an hour sustained. All right, that's the strongest that we're seeing on the half-say. When we look at the HWRF model, it's about the same place, well away and north of the Leeward Islands, but it's a weaker hurricane with winds sustained near 100 miles an hour, 95 to 100, so it's a Category 2 on the HWRF model, but continuing to strengthen more than likely as we go over the weekend. So there are models that already make this a hurricane on Saturday and continue to strengthen it. The GFS has really been the one that's been a lot weaker. So when we look at, again, this is going to be one previous model run from where we were, I just showed you on my weather computer. You notice that there was a quicker recurve here. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. A weaker storm might track a little bit farther to the west before that recurve arrives, but you can clearly see that there is a bend back towards the east on all of the models of the GFS, with none of the ensembles showing any direct impacts to the Bahamas, to Turks and Caicos, to the United States East Coast. And the European model in general is a little bit more concise and a little bit farther east with that turn. Again, so when we look at the latest that I have for you here, look at that almost due north push. It's almost like the European model understands the fact that we still don't have a true center, and then that slower west-northwest push, and eventually that recurve back into the open waters. All of this would be good news for everyone, including Bermuda. So this is the interesting thing. The last run of the GFS, if you look at the purple line, and this is your pressure, so the weaker storm here, your lower pressures and your stronger storms on the bottom of this graph, look how the deterministic bombs out this storm to a pressure under 950 millibars as we get towards, the middle and end of next week. Now, this would be even away from Bermuda, but becoming a much, much stronger storm than what you saw in the model run that I just showed you guys. A lot of the GFS models had it staying as a fairly weak storm, and some of them made it into a hurricane. Now, the European model is not as significant on the higher end compared to the GFS, but many more ensemble models make this a hurricane, right? Especially as we get under 990, 980 pressure, you're starting to get into some pretty good hurricane force, more than likely with that. Of course, there's a correlation, lower pressure, stronger winds in general. It does vary between storm to storm, but when we get into these 990s, 980s and lower, certainly we're starting to get into some pretty significant hurricane force winds, likely with Gabrielle. And the European model does show that again a little bit earlier in time, maybe beginning Sunday into Monday and Tuesday of next week. The overall intensity forecast on Gabrielle, again, let me be clear. Track-wise, the models have been very, very good over the last several years. For all the grief we got with Aaron and its track, it was almost spot on all the way through. So we'll see once we get that low-level center if the Hurricane Center wants to make any adjustments. But the one thing the models have not done very well is the intensity of these storms. Again, Aaron is another example where it went from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 in 24 hours. Could Gabrielle do the same? Likely not because of the wind shear, but we'll have to monitor the trends here. And again, we do have some that are on the higher end of this. So as we watch Gabrielle together over the next several days, it will likely only slowly develop the next few, but could become a major hurricane early next week. We'll follow the model trends. The forecast is to stay well away from the Eastern Caribbean. So if you're living in places like Puerto Rico or the U.S. and British Virgin Islands or Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts and Nevis and Anguilla, even towards Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, Everything looks good at this point in time. If you live in Bermuda, I would say watch and wait mode. That's simply what we have to do so far out in time. But if there's one area that could potentially be directly impacted by Gabrielle, it looks to be Bermuda at this point in time. Friends, as we take a quick pause, I want to thank you guys for taking a quick second and hitting that like button for me right now. If you haven't subscribed to Meteo Mundo, you want these tropical updates and your daily forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas. Friends, you found your home. Thanks for hitting that subscribe button and joining a great community. The one ask I have of you guys is to share this channel with one person that you know. Even if they watch other weather content on YouTube, maybe they'll see something that they like, an average looking guy talking about the weather, and they'll want to become a frequent viewer like you guys. I really appreciate all of that. Thanks for all of your support. All right, so now we're going to get into other areas of interest and what's happening locally. Obviously, I have to talk about our next potential area here. And the interesting thing about this is, and that's very interesting actually, it's probably the system's going through an update. So more than likely, this is the same area. I don't believe we have two. But if there is, again, you saw that the one GFS model, more than likely what's happening is that we're getting updates right now as we speak. There is a tropical wave where X marks the spot with a 20% chance to develop it as of the recording of this video. That is likely to continue to improve. And you notice that it is a little bit farther southerly track through the Atlantic basin. So that's the next one to monitor. I showed you at the end of some of the model runs, like on the European model, that we could potentially have some development out of that as well. I've already mentioned the very interesting feature that moved on shore in the Delmarva Peninsula, where we still have this trough and very active weather coming up from the northwest side of the Caribbean and into the Straits of Florida and the northern side of the Bahamas. And there have still been some models trying to spin up something weak at the low levels. So that's another area to be monitoring as well. We'll talk more about that coming up. I do want to start though in our western areas, because outside of Gabrielle more than likely moving 400 or 500 miles away from this area, there is a tropical wave bringing direct impacts as we speak. We had a flash flood warning for Antigua earlier today. We've had locally heavy rains through portions of the islands. Those are going to be your temperatures. I'm going to bring on the wind gusts to see if we've had anything gusty, but there's just been good, rich tropical moisture, some embedded lightning activity, and some just good downpours here for the Leeward Islands in general. And that should continue to be the trend the remainder of this Wednesday as this tropical wave axis moves from east to west, still pulling in a lot of moisture into the area. So, localized heavy rainfall, Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bart's, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbuda, Antigua, Montserrat, down towards Guadeloupe. You can see those thunderstorms there. I mentioned it in yesterday's video, and I think it's going to play out to be about correct, where Dominica is kind of the cutoff, where we're going to get some passing showers in Dominica and Martinique, but it's going to be a little bit drier ultimately south of there, especially in the Windward Islands, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Tobago. Now, one area that could buck that trend again is Trinidad. Just like yesterday, they had an adverse yellow alert for heavy rainfall on the western side of the island, and already some thunderstorms developing in the Port of Spain area at this point in time. But generally speaking, we're a little bit drier farther off towards the south. Got the live look outside to Corinth, St. Lucia. If you guys are new to the channel, I do have live cameras across the Caribbean to help tell your weather story. We've had some passing showers from time to time. I've been watching this camera a little bit here, especially kind of south and west of the camera. This camera is actually pointed to the north and to the west at this point in time, but you can kind of see a little bit darker sky there at the end of the frame there towards the horizon. And we've had some of that, but still many dry hours and locations in St. Lucia. And if you guys live there, let me know in the comments section below if you've seen any of that. Certainly, again, if you guys live in the Leeward Islands and you've had impacts from some of this weather, please let me know as well. It seems like we always have fresh winds across the Virgin Islands, and we're seeing that again for today. St. Croix, 22-mile-an-hour breeze. And again, a few heavier thunderstorms are beginning to develop. This whole area is kind of just rotating in with some impressive lightning to go along with it. Now, this is not all bad news, because we could use some rain to cool things off, but there will be some locally heavy rainfall. Can rule out a couple of flood advisories from time to time in this area. We'll get back over to the infrared satellite imagery, and you can clearly see the quick passing showers here with the brisk winds, 25 to 30 miles an hour in portions of Puerto Rico. Additional rain is expected to become widespread and heavy across the Dominican Republic and Haiti for today, and you can see that beginning to move in from Puerto Plata all the way back down towards Punta Cana. This should make make a run towards La Romana and Santo Domingo, and later in the day develop over the Haitian side of the island as well. Showers and storms are just kind of sitting right over Cuba at the hour. Nice, wind gusts there from time to time. And it's just going to be an extremely active forecast for our northwest areas, okay? And by the way, I really hope that wasn't an 86-mile-an-hour wind in southeast sides of Florida. That would be a tornado. Anyway, so over to Jamaica, my friends here. Again, we've had locally heavy rainfall, still really hoping those parched areas get more rain. It's a possibility. We are just in a moisture-laden atmosphere. Saw that there was a thunderstorm at sea warning for the northern coastal waters, and from time to time, we'll get some of those thunderstorm warnings. Can't even rule out the large wave and strong wind advisories coming back into play as well. The moisture content is a little bit more prominent right now over the Cayman Islands. So places like Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, and Cayman Brac, all with better opportunities. I got to tell you something. You live in this area, you look outside, it's a pretty dark sky outside. There is so much tropical moisture in play here. And again, being mid-September, we always have to watch out for some spin and potentially something to develop. Now, again, the Hurricane Center is not highlighting any of this. Right now, this is just disorganized, heavy rain and storms. We still have the excessive rainfall watch for Belize for 2 to 4 inches of rain or up to 100 millimeters. You can see the thunderstorms are developing along the coastline from Dangriga, Belize City, the offshore islands, San Pedro, moving up into the southern sides of Quintana Roo. And again, just deeper into this Wednesday that we go, it's going to get wetter. I would expect showers and storms to rotate into the Bay Islands of Honduras as well. Let me show you the visible satellite imagery. And again, this is a little bit better to keep a lookout for any broader spin. At this point in time, everything looks to be very elongated. I'm not really seeing anything out of any of the different levels here, but it's something to monitor, especially as we get a little bit farther north and east of this area. So we will now swing into South Florida and the Bahamas. Look, it's really stormy here, guys. Wet weather. And again, I really hope, I got to check this out because I'm seeing this just like you guys are. Okay. Thank goodness that's the temperature. So my system just picked up at the temperature rather than the wind. Whew. You never like to see an 80-plus-mile-an-hour wind because then you got to put the brakes on and say, all right, did we have a funnel cloud or a tornado of some kind? Let me bring on the radar data out of the Miami, Florida area. And again, we can pick up the storms even in western Cuba from this radar. Look how wet it is. It's another extremely stormy, wet day. Northern Bahamas, Walker's Key, Grand Bahama, Freeport, Lucaya, the Abacos, Marsh Harbor, Bimini, Andros will spin in towards Nassau, New Providence, and Eleuthera. And again, locally heavy rainfall. We could see a funnel cloud out of this, moisture-laden air, just more problematic rain and storms here for an area that has been very wet over the last several days. So some severe weather, some flooding is not out of the question here. Live look outside to central Eleuthera and Governor's Harbor. Again, we've had some passing showers. You can clearly see the buildup of the thunderstorms for today with fairly breezy conditions in the Bahamas as well. Again, we're just a little bit farther southeast from this camera from where the concentration of storms are, but at this point in time, so here's Eleuthera, we're looking back off towards the storms right now, but I do expect some of that to have the opportunity to build back up to the east as well and potentially impact that area a little bit more. Generally speaking, I expect scattered showers over the southeast Bahamas and Turks and Caicos for today, and Bermuda should enjoy a pretty nice afternoon overall. My friends in the ABC Islands continue to be moisture starved, sunshine, breezy conditions, but dry weather, and you get this gorgeous shot from the Oranjestad area. This is Eagle Beach. Even the wind today isn't as prominent, but look at that turquoise along the beach. Man, oh man, is it fantastic. I know our friends there in Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao could use some rain, but you get the nice blue sky out of things as well. All right, so let's look at just kind of locally the next couple of days here. So let me bring back up the model. We'll go over to our reflectivity. And again, we're just going to go out a couple of days. I want to kind of talk about how these tropical waves are going to be moving. All right, first of all, let's do that. Don't worry. This should still work. There we go. What's happening is I think we're getting new model runs in the behind the scenes. And now literally normally I only have one choice for each of the models. And now I have two choices. I think it's A, old, and B, new. So I got to go to the new one. Anyway, here we go. Wet, sloppy, problematic rain the next several days outside of Gabrielle. Clearly, moisture continues to stream in over the central and the northern Bahamas with waves of heavier showers and storms, just like we're seeing on this Wednesday. Still expected to be a high chance for storms in this area the next several days. Locally heavy rain could cause some problems. We'll begin to finally see the rain chances tamper down a bit in the Northwest Caribbean, Cuba, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Quintana Roo, northern sides of Central America. Still could be wet in some spots, but we're beginning to break it apart a little bit, at least in the shorter term, as that axis of tropical moisture moves off towards the west. But again, we're streaming in some of that moisture along this trough axis as well. An area that I expect to just stay very wet overall with passing showers is going to be the Eastern Caribbean. Again, not as wet down towards the Windward Islands, but still some rain, you know, from time to time. Barbados down towards TNT, still many dry hours and locations overall. A wetter forecast, especially again, Guadeloupe North, Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla included in that. The Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, showers and storms likely. Same situation for the Dominican Republic, and even a little bit better rain chances towards Turks and Caicos. You know, ultimately, again, we'll see some of this rain trying to make its way towards Bermuda, and that's well ahead of anything developing with Gabrielle over the next 72 hours. If I show you guys the total rain here over the next 5 days, boy, it's really going to make me work for this, isn't it? The total rain. Oh, this is funny. All right, no, that's perfect, actually. All right, I just wanted to point out a couple of areas here. You get into the northern Bahamas, and we've already had some very wet weather lately here, right? But if we can query these numbers, you know, you're going to see several spots with additional 3+ inches of rain in a couple of areas. Now, does it fall over the islands? Does it stay offshore? That's always the question. But, you know, we got pretty aggressive rainfall totals here in this starts right now, not even what's already fallen today so far. So for the next few days, again, you know, 2, 4, 5 inches of rain, locally higher than that. Significant rain is possible over portions of Cuba. My friends in Jamaica, wouldn't it be fantastic to get so many spots with, you know, 2+ inches of rain or more than 50 millimeters in a lot of areas? It's just nice to see this big bullseye of rain across the island. Hopefully it comes to fruition. You know, we're going to have rain chances there. Now, again, some areas of Central America, Tegucigalpa areas, north, could see extremely heavy rain with more flooding potential. And you can see that we're drier in the Windward Islands with some significant rainfall portions of the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Leeward Islands the next couple of days. Many spots will be in that 50 millimeter rain, 2 inches of rain, but they'll be locally higher with a couple of spots that will miss the boat and not get as much. Clearly, we're going to have a lot of heavy rainfall closer to wherever Gabrielle is going to go. Friends, I do appreciate you guys. You can follow us across all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video? You know, the easiest way to do that is go to mymediamundo@gmail.com. Now, look, as always, if you have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. I'm happy to answer that. And please remember that Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. They offer free consultation and policy reviews. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. Go to leanonmelaw.com if you would like more information. Friends, thanks for taking a quick second, liking the channel, and subscribing. Have a great rest of your day. You know I'm monitoring things, and I'll have the latest forecast for you coming up tomorrow right here at Meteo Mundo.